Joanne, thank you so much for joining me today. We have something in common that most Canadians haven't done. We have both toured mines in Northern Ontario. How has this changed or challenged your perspective on the industry of mining?
Well, when I went to Gogama last August to visit the Côté Gold mine, it was the field trip of my life, to say the least. And truthfully, prior to my experience, I didn't know very much about modern mining. And modern is a key word here because it was really the most sophisticated operation. And it absolutely changed my worldview on mining. So I would say from my experience, actually, going to a mine, visiting it, staying for the evening, living on a mine site, it absolutely shifted how I thought about mining and how I would bring it back to the work that I do. And I'm sure that it was very similar for you as well.
It was, I remember being in Sudbury and going to Glencore's Nickel Rim South. And for me, I had that aha moment when we got into the mine and I saw how big the mine is. I saw how modern it is. I love that you used that word, how clean it was. I mean, I never imagined any of those things. For you, with that first experience, that amazing field trip, as you call it, what were some of those moments that really stood out in terms of what you saw, what you heard, what you felt? What still sticks with you today?
I joined 20 other educators. And what we did is we toured on a tour bus. We got to visit the Côté Gold mine through IM Gold, and we got to really experience their operations for the day. And what we saw was aha all the way through. I think for me, what stood out the most is my major reckoning moment would be when I saw the self-autonomous trucks. When I saw the trucks and the diggers and the drills, and you see all of this amazing automation at work. In my case, we went to an open pit mine, but when I saw all these trucks in action, it was just amazing. I just had never seen anything like it in my life. And what further amplified that was when I went to the control room with the other teachers, and we saw how everything was being worked remotely. And I wrote this in our blog when I came back and talked about the experience, but it really looked like a Netflix series. I mean, it was so modern. And I keep using the word modern. And I think that's more because from my experience, a lot of people's perceptions about mining belong in the past. Whereas what I experienced at Côté Gold was more like visiting the Jetsons. It was more like a very futuristic experience, not at all these antiquated images of the coal mining era. It just was absolutely opposite of anything that you would experience. The whole trip, to be truthful, was an aha moment. From the minute we entered, Côté Gold, and there was this huge security detail, I felt like I was in an airport. I mean, every single moment felt like an aha moment, but certainly if I had to pinpoint it, seeing the self-autonomous trucks, doing all this manual labor was just incredible.
I do have to say, too, that you are sitting here in our studio. You're wearing PPE. Kind of walk us through what you're wearing right now in terms of what it's like going into a mine and all of the safety precautions they take. I mean, that's one thing that really blew me away is that you go through so many levels of safety. And I felt really, really secure when I had a chance to go deep underground.
Safety is the key word. I couldn't agree with you more. I know that we went to different mines and we had different experiences, but I think that that's pretty much a standard. In our case, we were there under the leadership of Brian Wilson, and he had a real talk with our group about safety. And certainly part of safety is the personal protective equipment that you wear. So for those of you who are listening and not watching, I came equipped in my Covergalls shirt and PPE and even a matching orange scrunchie. It's bright orange. I'm very visible, but I feel very good. And for those who are new to Covergalls, as I was, their PPE is really designed for women and it's meant to be very inclusive. And that's also, I think, another important message in terms of so many people. I feel that when they have past images of mining, that also extends to the workwear that you wear on the site. And I thought I was very passionate, I was very, what's the word I'm looking for? Fashionable. I felt like I was wearing mining couture, and to the point that I never really thought I would wear this PPE ever again. But I've worn it many times since my trip in August. I even wore it on Halloween where I was a minor.
Well, I do want to say, just to pick up on your point of inclusion, in an earlier season of This Is Mining, we did talk to the founder of Covergalls and really enjoyed hearing more about that conversation. You also mentioned about sort of your perception of mining before you had this experience. What do you think that people get most wrong about mining today? And how has your experience on that tour helped to really shift people's views, whether it's parents or educators?
I think back to what we were saying before, I think there's just a lot of very outdated perceptions when it comes to mining. So I think that from anyone I've talked to, people will have very old visions that are very outdated. Again, back to like the coal, mining era. And I think, whether that's from the shows that students and families watch or, the video games that, depict some older, more traditional mining equipment. I think that it's just so out of date. I don't think that people are envisioning what we experienced when we went to the site. They're not seeing these very sophisticated state-of-the-art operations. So I think that perceptions are just really out of date. You spoke about cleanliness. I don't know if people realize just like how clean and how safe and how much thought and how much STEM and robotics and artificial intelligence are going into these operations. I know in my case, when I went to visit IAMGOLD's Côté Gold mine, they had just invested in a robotic dog. Talk about the standard of safety to go in and do a lot of tasks that normally would be done by a human being done by a robotic dog. So just absolutely incredible safety, cleanliness, measures, commitments, and also the environmental stewardship. I know in my case, our group of teachers, the 20 of us, we went to visit Sudbury after we were in Go Gamma, and there were millions of trees planted in the efforts, the regreening process. And I'm telling you, if you had parachuted me where we were standing, I would have never in my life guessed that I was standing in Sudbury. It was so lush. It was so green. I mean, I was just surrounded by trees. I would have never thought that I was in Sudbury. I just would have never thought that. And again, I'm willing to bet that if the general public had been parachuted where our group of 20 teachers was standing with all those millions of trees planted, I don't believe that they would have guessed that they were standing in Sudbury either. So I think all of these points together really shifted my perceptions. And that made me come back and want to talk about mining. And truthfully, I don't think I really talked about mining very much before. It wasn't really on my radar. And now I talk about it all the time. I talk about it to truthfully anyone who will listen to me.
So let's talk a little bit about that. How has this experience changed the way that you're guiding students, the way that you're even guiding your own children when it comes to deciding on careers for the future?
I believe in exposure. I think it's just as simple as talking about mining and just bringing it into the conversation. I think that it's overlooked often, and there might be misconceptions that there's a negative feeling, amongst educators about mining, but truthfully, I just think it's not on the radar. So I think that just bringing it into the conversation, I know in my case, something as simple as having my children involved, talking to them about the trip that I took with the other teachers, showing them that video, which I must say, I think they watched this video 1,000,000 times. They were obsessed with this video that we filmed in Go Gamma. They watch it literally all the time. They pull it up on YouTube. But to the point that I like to say this because it's so funny that, my son loves YouTube, as most 10-year-olds do. And sometimes there'll be like a toy truck commercial will come on and he'll yell, Mom, come look, it's mining. And then I'm like, wow, that's amazing, because I'm certain that he never uttered those words before.
It is interesting. I think about my own son, who is now in grade 11, and I was reading some of his school books. And when they talk about mining, they talked about it in a way that didn't really represent my experience with mining. Again, to use that word of it being very modern, very sophisticated, very tech-focused and tech-enabled. If you had a magic wand and you could redesign the encounters that young people and students have when it comes to mining, what would you do in terms of making mining more visible? And I'm going to add another thing here too, also more reflective of what it actually is today.
I think at this point, something as simple as putting mining into the conversation. I mean, certainly there isn't a huge emphasis on mining in the Ontario curriculum, but that takes time. I think that the more teachers know about mining, the more educated they are. They can bring those learnings back to the classroom and into simple conversations. Because right now, I don't believe that mining is really on the radar in school conversations. But truthfully, careers of the future are so important. And I know that that's been a topic on many of your podcasts. But even if mining per se isn't going to be the career of choice for, some of these students, I believe that just knowing about mining and being educated about mining as Canadians is so important. It's such a major driver of our province and of our country. So just even being aware about the impact of mining, and even something as simple as relating it for students to everyday things that they love, whether it's their phone, whether, it's their tablet. I think that students don't really think about how these objects they love, how they come into creation. And certainly for something as simple as gold, and I keep talking about gold because that was the mine experience I had. I know when I told people I'm going to a gold mine, people, what do they associate with gold? What would you say? What's your guess?
I want to say Minecraft, but that's because all I keep thinking of when you're talking about mining.
From my experience, it's jewelry.
Yes.
People keep, gold, bring me back some gold. I want to make, I want jewelry. But really, if you think about all the applications of gold, I mean, there's so many things, whether it's medical equipment, your phone, your computers, like gold is so important for so many things. It goes so much more beyond jewelry. So I think that there's a lot of learning. And as I said, I think just as simple as putting it in the conversation, but also it doesn't have to only be in STEM subjects. Like mining is everywhere. It's in business, it's in economics, it's in geography. So I think just including it in the conversation, I think that would really move the dial.
What advice do you have for parents? Like I mentioned, we're both moms and we want to be able to guide young people in terms of the opportunities for the future. You talked a little bit about starting those conversations. When you think about actually trying to kind of demystify mining for the next generation, what are some other things that parents can do? Because not everybody's going to have a chance to go into a mine like we have. So what can be done?
That's a great question. And it's not an easy question. And I'm sure many others have asked that as well. I think, again, it's back to exposure. I think it's just about even talking about mining. I mean, I don't think that it's part of many dinner time conversations right now, or part of, YouTube breaks, when or taking a walk with your kids. I think that it's just finding ways to bring many different careers to the table, untraditional. I feel that a lot of times as parents, we're not necessarily talking about careers of the future. We talk about the careers that are very easy for our kids to understand, whether it's like teaching or medicine or law. But truthfully, if you look at careers of the future, so many of the jobs that our children are going to be looking at, they don't even exist today. So I think that talking about mining is important, showing them the video, but certainly there's a lot of great books. And I think looking at children's books, I've discovered a lot of amazing books, whether it's about rocks, whether it's about mining. There's this great book, Anna's Adventures in the Mines, that I was showing to my son that was, I thought, really interesting. I think it's just about being creative and finding different ways that are age appropriate to talk to your children. If you have a younger child like mine, it might be as simple as starting with rocks, right? Like rocks might be simple. Maybe in your case with a high school student, depending on what his interests are, relating back, to his interests. I don't think there's a one size fits all solution, but I think the fact that if it's even on our radar, we can be a little bit more creative about how to talk to our children about many different careers that are maybe not the normal traditional ones at our fingertips.
You make a really good point, because I think a lot of that involves, as parents, meeting our kids where they're at. So with my son being a little bit older and being interested in things like geopolitics, all of a sudden there's a really great opportunity to talk about mining when it comes to critical minerals, because that's all you're going to see in terms of what's coming out in conversations from world leaders who are meeting together. And Canada has such a unique role to play there. So kind of meeting the kids where they're at. You understand this very well. Your business helps families really dream bigger. When you think about mining, how has that helped to really expand your own imagination of what's possible?
You have great questions, Amber. I think that mining represents like all of these possibilities. And our mission at Teachers on Call is to really support students on their academic journey so they can be successful in any subject that they're struggling with or they want to excel in, or anything in between. And by equipping students with the skills to master those subjects, that will help them be successful in the college or university program of their choice. And my hope is that, through our company, through tutoring, we can also not only be part of their academic journey, but open up different career possibilities. And certainly now there's so much youth unemployment, that's a big headline in the news today. I look to mining as this amazing industry that has so many opportunities for our youth, so many jobs. And so my hope is, through a company like mine and tutoring, that we can prepare students really for the future of work and also open their eyes to the amazing opportunities that careers like mining can offer them that maybe aren't on their radar, opportunities that have incredible flexibility, really strong compensation, and as I said, a lot of jobs. So I hope there's an intersection between these different worlds, and I hope that makes sense, but certainly I feel very inspired.
One of the things that I've noticed over the course of helping to host and produce so many seasons of This Is Mining is that there's a real community in the mining sector. And it's kind of incredible to be part of this community, especially if it's in unexpected ways. We've both come to this community in our own different ways. One of the things that we're focusing on in this season is those origin stories. When you think about mining, what does it mean to you to be part of this community?
I feel very proud to be the accidental advocate or accidental ambassador. And I feel I have an important role to play. And now that I've experienced life on a mine and all of the amazing career pathways for students, I feel like it's my mission to bring back and teach the teachers and the parents, and certainly anyone who's interested in learning more about meaningful career pathways for children. And even though this wasn't directly your question, the part about camaraderie, I think is really an important word, because when I lived on the mine site and I slept there for the evening with the 20 other teachers, I witnessed such camaraderie. It's really interesting when the workers, especially the ones who are working on site at the mine, when they have the shifts, they work maybe 2 weeks on or 2 weeks off, or 1 week on or 1 week off. But there's something really collegial. It reminded me a bit of going to university and being, in the cafeteria with all of your friends. Like, you could just see that these colleagues were having such a good time with each other. And the food wasn't like university. I would equate the food more to a cruise ship, because the food was incredible. And I think that wasn't your question about what people wouldn't expect, but certainly it's not what I would expect. The food was incredible. I mean, there's steak, there's seafood, there's really exotic cuisine, and so much variety. So I really had a wonderful time. And there was a games room, a billiard room. As I said, I was on a cruise ship.
It's amazing. As you're talking, the one thing I think about it when it comes to mining and helping teachers and students navigate through this new industry, and new in the sense that it's become more modern over the years, is kind of to expect the unexpected, right? And I think that's the exciting part of it. When you think about the role that you're going to continue to play going forward, what are some of the things that you want to achieve when helping other people to really find their own origin stories when it comes to mining?
What do I want to achieve? I think at the end of the day, I'm just happy to open people's eyes, just to explore something new that maybe they haven't considered before. Obviously, it has to be the right fit. But if you don't know, then it's something you're not going to go down that path. So my hope is to really educate as many people as possible, because as you said before, not everyone is going to have the opportunity you had and I had. So I feel really responsible to share that journey so that as many people can feel like they were on that trip as I was.
Final question for you, for people who are listening to this and who are interested in learning more. Why should they learn more about mining?
Why should they not? They should learn more about mining because it's incredibly important. As I mentioned, it's a major driver of our economy, provincially across the country. It's part of big discussions across the globe, our critical minerals. I mean, it's part of everyday objects that we rely on. We wouldn't have our cell phones and our laptops without the mining industry. And I don't know about you, but I can't imagine my life without my laptop or without my cell phone. And certainly there are so many career pathways for students, like so many, really for every type of student. I mean, it is so inclusive. And that's another thing. I could talk about mining forever, but even when I went there are so many jobs that people might not even associate with mining. And while you might have the more traditional STEM jobs or even the more traditional trade jobs, but really mining needs everyone. They need chefs, they need nurses, they need security detail people. They need absolutely everyone. And I think that in an age where, there is youth unemployment and a lot of people are worried about their kids for careers of the future, I think that an industry like mining, has something for everyone. So I think that that's incredibly important. So why should they learn about mining? I say, why not?
Well, listen, thank you so much for joining me today. For people who want more information, where is the best place for them to go?
Great question. I would say for anyone listening who's inspired by this interview, for educational and career resources, go to the OMA's website. The campaign I was personally involved in is called This Is Mine Life. And there's great resources through the OMA Ontario Mining Association that can be accessed through Talentag as well. There's also the Mining Industry Human Resources Council, also known as Mirror. You can go to the website miningneedsyou.ca. And again, there's really fun quizzes, ample information, job postings for anyone who's looking for opportunities in the sector. So I would urge them, check out these two as a starting point.
Excellent. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.